This is the program that shows you the side of police chase videos they didn't want you to see. Bungled arrests, kamikaze crooks, and cop-based carnage of all kinds. Welcome to Cops Uncut, the real car crash TV.
On my way.
Coming up on Cops Uncut. A lesson in taking the joy from joyriders. A criminal who apparently can't see 5 foot in front. And bad weather causes a bad crash.
260 at the corner. On my way.
If you're a criminal, one of the most important things to get right is the getaway vehicle. The Californian crooks in this stolen Winnebago are wanted by the cops in relation to a household burglary earlier in the week. This time they obviously went the whole hog and nicked an entire home. But they've cunningly chosen the slowest, most cumbersome getaway wheels they could find. The cops still managed to drag out the chase for 5 full hours through the early morning darkness and into daybreak. But if mobile homes make lousy getaway cars, then they make even worse off-roaders. So when the suspects turn onto a desert dirt track, their escape plan starts to look a bit shaky. The driver eventually gives up and flees on foot. And while his 3 accomplices are captured inside the rolling residence, the ringleader is eventually caught hiding behind a cactus and escorted off to a decidedly less mobile new home. Officially, the police are chasing this pickup down a Georgia highway because they believe the driver might be drunk. Unofficially, it's almost certainly because he's driving the most garish vehicle on the road. The offending pickup speeds through the busy traffic in a revolting vomit green blur, despite police attempts to employ a classic box maneuver. But just when it looks like the fugitive might be pulling ahead, the driver of the jolly green jalopy suffers a nasty off-camera crash and the chase comes to an end. Guns drawn, the officers haul the man out of his hideous truck. And once they get him on the ground, they all pile in for a puce pickup party. But at every get-together, there's always one party animal who takes things way too far. In this case, it's the cop who doles out a completely unnecessary beating to the already subdued suspect. Because nobody deserves this kind of treatment, no matter how hideous the color of their wheels. Still to come on Cops Uncut. A criminal and his cash go separate ways. A lesson in camouflage from a felon. And a crim on the run loses control on a highway.
260 at the corner. On my way.
Kentucky. The guy in the stolen car ahead is playing chicken with the cops. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to get fried. After stealing the motor from one of his own relatives at knife point, the suspect has tried to escape into the night. Evening pursuits are often the most dangerous as visibility can be limited. But even the cop behind sees this one coming.
Oh, shit.
In slow motion, we can clearly see that the car drives straight through this red light and slams into the passenger side of the car coming from the left, a stunt that's known in the trade as the T-bone. Remarkably, even though both cars were completely totaled, both drivers walk away from the wrecks unscathed. Not that the suspect is going to be walking anywhere in a hurry. You can be sure the cops will give this T-boner a thorough grilling before leaving him to simmer in the slammer. Still to come on Cops Uncut. This guy gets very, very lucky. There's some textbook pitting from this rookie cop. And two kids with a death wish leap from their moving truck. How to get arrested. If you've just done a robbery, you might be feeling pretty smug about having successfully relieved the bank of all that cash. But if the cops are after you, it's absolutely vital that you stay alert. You should try to keep an eye on your petrol gauge. Because if you're running on empty, your nice shiny Pontiac could turn out to be pretty darn useless pretty darn quickly. We'd also seriously advise against playing a deadly game of human Frogger. But if you happen to make it across the busy freeway in one piece, try to keep a firm hold of your stash. Because scrabbling around to pick up a few measly bills will only end up wasting valuable escape seconds. And you're sure to be picked up not long after, like this crap crook here. But at least you'll have given shows like Cops Uncut the perfect opportunity to wheel out some hilarious punchline, like how a fool and his money are easily parted.
.260 at the corner. On my way.
Over in Florida, 3 robbery suspects have taken a car for a joyride and are tearing up the road like the Indy 500. The pursuing cops are definitely in second place, but the runaway driver is no Nigel Mansell, as we can see when he tries to take this bend. His close brush with the shrubbery may have cost him a couple of hubcaps, but in the process he somehow gained himself a tree. He drives on looking like some kind of mobile Fawlty Towers tribute act. But as soon as he loses the vegetation, he also loses control. The car veers off into the greenery again, and the cops hedge their bets and move in for the kill. But there'll be no trophies for these racers, just a pit stop in the local jail. This fugitive ran from the cops and ran off the road. But his idea of camouflage was less than successful. All it did was made him look rather green. When you've been tugged by the cops on a rainy afternoon, be careful where you stand. Because you could easily end up as roadkill for the next crazy driver headed your way. Luckily, both people involved in this incident got out of the way in the nick of time and saved themselves from being flattened like badgers. No thanks to a somewhat backward approach from the cops. But even though the cops were backwards, this guy was definitely on the ball. From this helicopter, we have the perfect vantage point to enjoy a sunny Florida police chase. The suspect can be clearly identified as the one not driving a police car. The fugitive is, in fact, a repeat offender who sunk to an all-new low by carjacking his ex-wife's Nissan. There's only one way to deal with people like this. Give them a bit of a pit. Keen viewers of Cops Uncut will be familiar with the pit or precision intervention technique, but this chopper cam provides a rare bird's-eye view of a textbook pit by a brave young rookie fresh out of cop college. This officer satisfies his appetite for destruction only to discover that the doors were open all along. After which the tattooed troublemaker just sits on the grass, dazed and confused, until it's time to hobble off to jail.
260 at the corner. On my way.
The reason this car is travelling considerably faster than anything else is because the driver's trying to outrun the LAPD. The cops reckon the car has been stolen by a group of thieves who did over a bank earlier in the day. But at these speeds, controlling a car full of people is rather difficult. Perhaps that's why when the driver attempts a particularly ill-advised maneuver, he ends up taking his fellow suspects for an impromptu spin, slap bang into the concrete divider in the center of the freeway. Startled by their own good fortune, the cops pounce on the crippled vehicle and start opening doors and bashing in windows. But even though it's a complete wreck, the crooks still seem pretty attached to their getaway car. Arresting officers end up with quite a struggle on their hands when it comes to pulling all the suspects out of the wreck. One of the officers, though, discovers some potentially valuable evidence and puts it carefully to one side for later. But thanks to a spectacular slideshow, this is almost certainly an open and shut case. At Cops Uncut, we like to think our show has an educational benefit, which is why someone really should sit American policemen down and get them to watch an episode or two.
How you doing tonight, guys? How you doing tonight? The reason I stopped you, you don't have any lights to the rear of your vehicle. Any whatsoever. Do you have your driver's
If they tuned in regularly enough, they'd be able to spot behavior like this a mile off.
Stolen vehicle, just the cuff! Stolen vehicle, just the cuff!
These suspected car thieves have just pulled a classic Cops Uncut favourite. The infamous drive off and make your arresting officer look like a total dipstick.
Stolen vehicle, just the cuff! Stolen vehicle, just the cuff!
It's not sophisticated or difficult, but it works every time. Maybe someone should tell these criminals to watch the show as well. Then they'd know for sure that getting out of a car while it's still moving is definitely not a very good idea. Because if they're still able to stand after such a stupid stunt, they'll find that their legs are simply no substitute for a fast set of wheels. And they're almost guaranteed to get caught by the cops a second later, whether they're on camera or off. Still to come on Cops Uncut. A truck window bears the brunt of this cop's brawn. A fleeing felon loses his nerve on the run. And a Rosa gets rammed.
Don't hit me again.
Many a high-speed chase is brought to an end by something called the pit maneuver. This ticklish tactic involves colliding with a vehicle on purpose and is usually only carried out by highly trained police officers. Today, however, the civilian driver in this SUV has decided to try and ram the suspected drug dealer in this car here.
Look at that! Oh no! An SUV tried to stop this thing.
In this slow-motion replay, you can clearly see the 4x4 attempt to nudge the fleeing convertible as it tries to pass on the inside. It doesn't succeed, but it does cause a momentary loss of control, which is all the opportunity the cops need to show how the pit is really done. Except that theirs doesn't work either.
Trying to bring it to an end, and he's not stopping. And he's going to pit him right here in the fast lane of the northbound 5 freeway, and and he's still trying to get away.
So, after a couple of botched efforts, one of the police drivers resorts to a fairly extreme variant of the tactic. A piece of automotive insanity that's lucky not to get anyone killed.
That is not like any pit maneuver I've ever seen.
He then unceremoniously dumps him at the side of the street.
They were ramming this car. Very dangerous.
But what's really amazing is that the cops pull off this crazy stunt with complete disregard for the safety of everyone else on the road.
And while that was going on, was that there were other vehicles that were on the freeway. You can see at the bottom of your picture, folks still driving by here.
But the cops don't care. They're just happy they've caught their suspect. But when it comes to pulling off precision maneuvers, these guys really put the pit in incompetence. Police Academy Lesson 99, Handcuffing. When a felon has been leading you and your colleagues around the houses, the best thing to do is try and get a pair of handcuffs on him. Handcuffs, or just plain cuffs if you prefer, are quite difficult to deploy while your suspect is still driving, so you should always try and find a way to make him stop before you put them on. Stopping him can be done using a number of different techniques. Sirens and flashing lights should always be your first port of call, but they can sometimes be ineffective. Regular viewers will have seen one of our previous masterclasses on ramming. If you've got a suspect who won't pull over for your sirens, ramming normally does the trick. If there's more than one cop at the scene, send in your biggest troopers first to try and intimidate the suspect into submission. At this point, the felon may just lock his doors and refuse to get out, but don't let this stop you. A little tap on the window with your nightstick will soon get things going. With the suspect out of his car, you and your colleagues should quickly form what's known as a bundle, where several officers sit on the man at once so he can't escape or breathe. Now and only now is it time to pop on the cuffs. Just remember, handcuffs are supposed to go on his hands, not his feet. The clue is in the name. If you've done your job correctly, your suspect should still be able to walk, but he'll no longer be able to do things like put up a fight, comb his hair, use the internet, or crucially, drive off in your car. So follow these steps and you'll always be a happy cuffer. Before you cuff, be prepared to get rough. And while it might look like a bundle of fun, never pull your suspect's leg. Cuffing is a serious business. Class dismissed. Still to come, the cop that jumps on a joyrider.
260 at the corner.
On my way.
The man driving here is called Gil Costello. Gil's had a busy morning. He's clubbed his landlord around the head with a hammer and stolen his SUV. But Gil seems to be having second thoughts about the whole enterprise. What do you do when you're being pursued by the police at 100 miles an hour and you're having a shaky moment? Well, if you're Gil Costello, you pick up your mobile and you dial 911. Here's some of Gil's telephone conversation.
They're gonna hurt me, they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna hurt me, I'm so afraid.
Hello, can you please slow down?
They're gonna hurt me.
Hello, Gil?
They're gonna hurt me, they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna hurt me.
No, they're not gonna hurt you.
But of course Gil was right, they are going to hurt him, and once he's down and cuffed, he gets a good roughing up. Joyriding often gets a bad rap. The name suggests lots of fun and games in a car, but joyriders often get involved in dangerous stuff, like speeding and reckless endangerment. So if a cop on patrol sees driving like this, then chances are he's got a bunch of joyriders on his hands.
He just ran me.
And it's this cop's duty as a policeman to bring them to a stop. Unless, of course, the joyriders inadvertently handle that side of things themselves. Understandably, his suspects aren't keen on ending their pleasure cruise at this point, so they try a bit of monkey business to keep the fun going. And this cop decides to return the favour, despite the desperate pleas of the man in the passenger seat. But as soon as he's got his suspects where he wants them, they just keep on going, determined to be as big a pain in the arse as possible. And this joyride turns into a fun run. Just off camera, a chap called Michael is caught, and it's down to our cop to break the bad news.
Michael, you're under arrest.
All that's left to do now is to check that there's nobody hiding in the glove box. Joyriders can be slippery customers, but if it looks like your suspects are losing their grip on the road and everything else, then it might be time to give their car a little push.
Just hit me again.
260 at the corner. On my way.
That's it for today's show, and what a gas it's been. We had a T-bone of the non-state variety. No joy for a pair of joyriders. Fun and games in the forest for this criminal's car. Rain didn't stop play on the side of this highway. And we had a mishmash of motor madness from the cops. Be careful out there.